Hi, welcome back to the Online Radio Training School. In our last video, we were introduced to Centova, a radio streaming management system. One of the features we touched on was the listener statistics that the streaming control panel can provide. As we've already said in this series, you cannot make wise decisions about your programming until you know all about your listening audience. And Centova will provide you with very accurate listener information. Why? Because it keeps a record of everyone who listens to your internet radio stream. In this video, we'll find out exactly what kinds of information Centova can give you and what it all means. As our example, we'll use one of our radio stations called Jazz Cafe, and we'll look at the listener statistics for the month of August 2016. Okay, let's go into Centova and then the listener statistics. First, if we click on listeners, we can see what is happening right now. As you can see, Jazz Cafe has 11 listeners. This is where they are. This is how long they've been listening, and this is what they're listening with. Now, if we click on Reports, it opens up 7 option tabs. Recent Activity allows us to look at the stats for the past 48 hours. Now on to the Listeners tab. Total Listener Minutes says how long Jazz Cafe was listened to during August. That's for all listeners. So, for the month, our station was listened to for a combined total of 8,649 hours. On the right-hand side of the screen, Listener Trends shows us whether our numbers are up or down compared to other time periods. Now, each time a person listens to our radio station, this is listed as a session. If a person listens for a while in the morning and then again in the evening, this is listed as 2 sessions, even though it's the same person. So here, for August, the total number of times people tuned in was over 15,000. If a person tunes out, then immediately tunes back in, this is called a reconnect and is not considered a separate session. ASCAP is the Music Performance Rights Organization in the U.S., and they require North American radio stations to submit a monthly report. ASCAP has a different definition of a session to the one we've just learned. A listener must be tuned in for a minimum of 90 seconds for it to be counted as a single ASCAP session. So channel surfers generally won't be counted. After that, every 60 minutes of listening time counts as one additional ASCAP session. Centova calculates a separate figure for the number of ASCAP sessions. It will automatically create a report that can be sent to your local copyright licensing authority. This report includes what songs were played during the month, when, and how many listeners for each song. Your monthly ASCAP fee is calculated on how many listener sessions you had over the month, and the funds go to the owners of the songs you play. Centova divides the total listener minutes by the number of sessions to calculate an average session length. This gives us a very rough guide as to how long people are listening. In August, it was 32 minutes. This is useful to compare with subsequent months to see upwards or downwards trends. However, if we have a lot of channel surfers who only listen for a few seconds, this will reduce our average session duration, which may not give us a clear picture. Total data transfer indicates how many gigabytes we streamed in total over the last month. This is useful for 2 things. First, it gives us a clear indicator of listenership, and it is easy to compare with other months. Second, it helps us make sure we have contracted enough bandwidth from our broadcast streaming provider. If we find we are burning through more than 80% of our monthly bandwidth allocation, we need to increase it to allow for future growth. In this screenshot, you will see that we are only 26 days into our month, and we've already used up 89% of our allocated bandwidth. So our advice is make sure you maintain at least a 20% bandwidth overhead. Even though listeners tuned in 15,000 times during August, that doesn't tell us exactly how many actual people listened in. Some will have tuned in more than once. Unique listeners tells us the total number of individual people who tuned in during the month. In this case, it was 4,095, which means on average each person listened in over 3 times. Again, this is a useful figure to compare with other months. Now, we need to compare total sessions with unique listeners. If total sessions is much higher, like in this case, it means people are coming back, and that's great. If the two numbers are the same, it means people are listening in but not coming back, and we need to figure out why. Unique Countries says that our station was listened to in 123 countries, and there's more information about that under the Countries tab. As a radio station, of course, we want people to listen in for as long as possible. Syntova keeps a record of how long people are listening. In this diagram, we have an overview of time spent listening. In this case, the highest number of sessions were less than 30 seconds in duration. This may be people clicking on our site for the first time but deciding not to stay. It was encouraging to see over 1,400 sessions were between 1 and 4 hours in duration. That means they listened and they liked it. Here we can see exactly who our top individual listeners are, ranked by both number of sessions tuned in and the number of minutes listened in over the month. We can also see where they are. Let's look at the User Agents tab. Top user agents tell us the most popular radio players people are listening on. This may indicate which device they are using, a computer or a mobile device. In this case, we were most listened to on the Winamp player, which is often a computer-based system, but it can be used on Android devices. In this example, the statistics labeled LAVF are very likely to be through TuneIn Radio and probably on mobile devices. And here, under the Countries tab, Syntova can tell us which countries listened into us the most, both by sessions and by minutes. If we are aiming our program at a specific geographic area, this statistic tells us how effective our broadcasts are. And if we find that we have higher listening numbers in a particular geographic area, we could alter our program content for the times of day those people are listening. The Tracks tab reveals the most and least popular songs. The least popular song stat is more interesting. It shows us what songs were playing when people stopped listening. In August, 11 people turned off during David Sanborn and A Tear for Crystal. If the same songs or programs keep appearing in this report, maybe we've got some unpopular material in our library. This page also shows us a very important statistic, the listener peak for the entire month. In August, our highest rating moment was on the 29th at 3:11 a.m. 27 people were tuned in and they were listening to Stanley Clarke and Hideaway. We can then analyze why we had so many listeners at that time of day. Again, compare this and keep an eye on any trends. Under the Historical tab, we find average listeners per hour. This tells us how each day part rated during the month. In August, the mornings tended to rate the highest. However, the most popular session on average was Friday evening. And for example, if we want to find out about afternoons, the most popular day was Sunday, and the least popular afternoon was Thursday. This means that perhaps we need to add some more exciting content to Thursday afternoons to attract more listeners. Remember, this is all based on the time zone you set for your server. You may need to do some basic time conversion to give you more accurate information for your listeners in other regions of the world. Finally, the Downloads tab allows us to access reports for our local copyright society. As you can see, these are in the CSV spreadsheet format. Well, I know we've given you a lot of information in this video, but the good thing is you can scroll back as you need to. Join us again for our next video. We'll learn about Auto DJ. Till then, happy broadcasting.